white Muhammad. They've got him in a trance. One hand is tied to the Persian Salmon, the other is in his pants. And the Muslim mob, they're restless. They need some book to show. As Jabril and I look out tonight from Retroversion Road.
Pop quiz. Who's the whitest prophet in history? You're probably thinking Joseph Smith, founder of Mormonism, right? What if I told you there's a prophet out there who's so white he makes Joseph Smith look like Malcolm X? He's so white he makes a bowl of vanilla ice cream yell, "Get him out of here, he's blinding me!" Many people who haven't read the Muslim sources assume that Muhammad was dark-skinned, but Arabs are classified as Caucasians and they can exhibit a variety of shades and tones. So if we want to know what Muhammad looked like, we'll have to go through some of the descriptions of his appearance found in the hadith.
Okay, so we're looking at hadiths here not because we think they're historically reliable. We're trying to get clues as to what was the reasoning, the thinking behind the creation of these hadiths, and why this focus on proving that Muhammad was white. Now, we don't think Muhammad was a historical figure. He might have been a composite of various religious leaders over even as much as a century, all kind of put together in a fictional narrative. But what is it with this white thing? Now, we will look at the Talmud in a few minutes.
Now, if Muhammad were sitting in a crowd of his fellow Arabs, how would we spot him? Sahih al-Bukhari, number 63. Narrated Anas bin Malik, while we were sitting with the Prophet in the mosque, a man came riding on a camel. He made his camel kneel down in the mosque, tied its foreleg, and then said, "Who amongst you is Muhammad?" At that time, the Prophet was sitting amongst us, leaning on his arm. We replied, "This white man reclining on his arm." "Hey, which one of you is Muhammad?" "This white Tom Willis-looking white guy leaning on his white arm, that's who." But let's keep reading about a prophet who makes the Brady Bunch look like NWA. Sahih Muslim, 6081. It was narrated that Abu Juhayfa said, "I saw the messenger of Allah with a white complexion and some white hairs." White complexion with white hairs. Who knew that Anderson Cooper was a 7th century prophet? Sahih Muslim, 6071. It was narrated from Al-Jurairi from Abu at-Tufail. I said to him, "Did you see the messenger of Allah?" He said, "Yes, he was white, with an elegant face." This guy's so white, he makes Queen Elizabeth look like Queen Latifah. And the Muslim sources go out of their way to remind us how white Muhammad was. They tell us about the whiteness of his shins, and the whiteness of his thigh, and the whiteness of his leg, and the whiteness of his stomach, and the whiteness of his forearms, and the whiteness of his armpits, and the whiteness of his cheeks. Based on these descriptions, a friend of mine who's a police sketch artist was able to put together a drawing of Muhammad. Have you seen this man? Kind of blends in with the whiteness of the paper. On a side note, to all my jihadi viewers, I can't figure out if this counts as a cartoon of Muhammad or not, but I don't really care.
So given that Muhammad is actually a messianic title, as we've seen over multiple videos, does this reference to whiteness have any messianic reference or connection? That's what we're going to look at next. So I'm going to be using this article by Dr. Baruch Korman in relation to this question of paleness, whiteness. Before we get there, this article is talking about Shlomo Yitzhaki, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, okay, and says that he's otherwise known as Rashi, and that he was a famous rabbinical commentator from France. He lived in the 11th century and authored commentaries on the Hebrew Bible and the Talmud. He's seen as one of the top Jewish scholars, and his works are revered today as foundational for understanding the proper interpretations of the written and oral Torah. The key thing here is that Rashi explains how the Messiah must be pale, and this is the crucial link that we need to explain these hadiths. Now, we'll come back to that in just a second. Let's look into who this guy is a little bit more detail. Okay, so that's a picture of him there. Rashi is actually an acronym of Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, a French religious educator and the head of the Troyes rabbinical court, which I believe is near to Paris. Rashi is most known for his commentaries on the Talmud and the Torah, which are very influential. Born in 1040, died in 1105. According to legend, he was a descendant of King David. It mentions that his family weren't particularly wealthy, very modest income. His father was a winemaker. In 1065, he moved to Mainz, where he continued the study of the Torah and Talmud under the guidance of Rabbi Isaac ben Judah. After his return to Troyes in 1065, Rashi was called up to become a member of the Troyes rabbinical court, the Bet Din. If you remember, the word gen seems to be connected to that word den or din, Bet Din. Okay. The court's task was to answer to queries related to halakha, Jewish religious laws. Upon the passing of Rabbi Sirach ben Abraham, Rashi took his place as the leader of the court, refusing the salary that came with it. As for his revenue, the majority agrees that he was making wine for a living, considering that he learned the craft from his father, although this hasn't been confirmed by an official source. Okay, so in 1070, Rashi decided to start his own yeshiva, an institution where Torah and Talmud will be studied. He attracted lots of disciples in a short amount of time. This is when he began working on his commentaries of the Torah and Talmud. It is believed that all the commentaries were derived from the lectures he gave in his yeshiva. He used his own insights as well as the answers that his students provided during the discussion. No doubt he will have been borrowing from tradition as well that probably went back many centuries. So finally it says he died in 1105. Okay, so now let's go back to this article. The 53rd chapter of Isaiah is a critical passage in understanding the work of Messiah. All scholars agree that Messiah is the Redeemer, but a Redeemer in what sense? Messiah will redeem Israel and those from the nations that turn to him in faith. Just how will Messiah do this? Now, I notice in the article it doesn't say that Messiah, it tends to say Messiah. There might be a reason behind that. But the article goes on to say, Isaiah speaks about a suffering servant in the latter half of his prophecy. Who is this suffering servant? This is a debated issue. What does Messianic Sanhedrin exactly say about Messiah in relationship to Isaiah 53? Okay, so this is the key bit, and we'll actually take a look at the text itself from the Sanhedrin section of the Talmud. On page 98, side B of Sanhedrin, the Gemara begins to discuss the name of Messiah. One should not conclude that the purpose is to know the literal name of Messiah, but terms that describe him and help the reader understand his character and work. In this discussion, 5 names are provided to assist the reader. One should not conclude that only one of the 5 names is correct, but in keeping with the rules for interpreting the Talmud, all 5 names are relevant in assisting the reader to understand Messiah. Per this article, we will only deal with the 5th name. The text says that Rabbanan offers the name Kiva Ra as the name of Messiah. Okay? Kiva Ra. This word means to be pale skin. The text actually says, Rabbanan says, pale in the house of Rabbi is his name, Messiah, for it is written, ... Rabbanan says, pale in the house of Rabbi is his name, the Messiah. The Talmud continues and quotes Isaiah 53:4. Surely our diseases he did bear, and our pains he carried them, whereas we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. Rashi comments that this section is discussing Messiah who is stricken with leprosy, and hence Rabbanan uses the name Kehivara, pale or white, as to relate this fact to the reader. What is important is that the Talmud relates three crucial points which Orthodox Judaism cannot reject or even debate. Rather, every Orthodox Jew must accept, and to which their views to Messiah adhere. Isaiah chapter 53 relates not to Israel, but to the Messiah. Messiah suffers for sin for the purpose of bringing redemption. And number 3, it was God's plan to afflict Messiah to accomplish this purpose. So let's have a look at the Talmud, Sanhedrin 98b. Rav says the world was created only for the sake of David by virtue of his merit. And Shmuel says it was created by virtue of the merit of Moses. And Rabbi Yohanan says it was created by virtue of the merit of the Messiah. So according to the Torah, the world was created for the sake of either David, Moses, or the Messiah. But what about those 5 names? So let's a little bit further down here. Apropos the Messiah, the Gemara asks, what is his name? The school of Rabbi Sheila says, Shiloh is his name, as it is stated, until when Shiloh shall come. The school of Rabbi Yanai says, Yinon is his name, as it is stated, may his name endure forever, may his name continue as long as the sun, and may men bless themselves by him. The school of Rabbi Hanina says, Hanina is his name, as it is stated, for I will show you no favor. And some say that Menahem ben Hizkiah is his name, as it is stated, because the Comforter that should relieve my soul is far from me. And finally, the 5th name, which is not really a name, it's more like a description that goes with the concept of the Messiah. And the rabbis say, the leper of the house of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is his name, as it is stated, indeed our illnesses he did bear, and our pains he endured, yet we did esteem him injured, stricken by God, and afflicted. So, to sum up, what are we seeing? We're seeing that the hadiths keep referring to Muhammad as white. We know that Muhammad is a Messianic title, and this has been the case for centuries, long before Islam comes along. The hadiths are not historical, but they do reflect something of the traditions that are being generated as time goes by. And what the hadiths seem to be echoing is something of that original idea around Muhammad as being the Messiah in the 7th century. Now, whether that's one person, 2 people, or a dozen people, that's kind of still question mark on that one. But the crucial bit is it is really clear that they do have the concept of Muhammad being a Messiah because it lines up. We don't understand why the hadiths are referring to Muhammad as white, but if we turn to the Torah, it suddenly becomes clear that paleness, whiteness is one of the reference names, as it were, for the Messiah. So thank you for watching.
Here comes the white Muhammad. They've got him in a trance. One hand is tied to the Persian Salmon, the other is his pants. And the Muslim mob, they're restless. They need some book to show. As Jabril and I look out tonight from Retroversion Road.